He carried the nuclear launch codes for the most powerful man on the planet, yet inside the White House. He wasn't even allowed to wear his uniform. Why, some claimed it was just optics. Others chalked it up to protocol. But the real answer? That was locked away 6 stories beneath Manhattan, behind a vault door thicker than many Pentagon walls. Sealed with a biometric lock, untouched for over 10 years, until tonight. This wasn't some forgotten relic of the Clinton years. This was about power, the kind of power that doesn't need elections or podiums. The kind that works in silence and signs in ink. A single signature in 1996 on a memo reading, effective immediately. All military personnel assigned to the West Wing will appear in civilian attire unless otherwise instructed. The name on the bottom: Hillary Rodham Clinton, the first. Lady who, according to whispers in the corridors of D.C., wasn't just first in title. She didn't sit at the National Security Council table, but she was a shadow in every meeting. She didn't hold elected office, but in the West Wing, everyone knew the unspoken rule. You could anger the president, but never cross her buzz. Patterson understood that better than most. He was the man with the football, the briefcase, carrying America's nuclear launch codes. Yet instead of being treated as a guardian of national survival, he was told to fade into the background. No ribbons, no insignia, just khakis, a plain white shirt, and a name tag that revealed nothing. Because Mrs. Clinton didn't want uniforms in her West Wing. And maybe it wasn't about appearances at all. Maybe it was about control. About reshaping the very symbols of authority. A man entrusted with the ability to end civilization couldn't look like a soldier. He had to be neutral, forgettable, invisible. That was the first whisper. The second came years later, hidden on a silver USB drive mailed to a tiny radio station buried under Arizona dirt. Addressed to one man, Dan Bongino. Inside were voice recordings, classified files, and one phrase repeated in the weary voice of an older Buzz Patterson. She made me invisible. 3 words spoken with the weight of someone who had carried more than codes. Someone who had carried truth and been forced to bury it. But now that truth was clawing its way back to daylight. The so-called Clinton vault wasn't just conspiracy forum folklore anymore. It was real. Dan now had the coordinates, the access code, and the voice of a man who had vanished 3 days after sending that USB dot. The steel groaned as the door opened. Concrete echoed. Lights flickered to life like they hadn't been woken in decades. As Dan stepped inside the underground cathedral of secrets, the blast door shut behind him with a final, almost personal slam. The air was colder than it should have been, sterile, precise, every surface smooth and silent. In the center, a single glowing screen. Then a voice, the same one from the tape. I wasn't allowed to wear my uniform while carrying the nuclear codes, not for security. For protocol, but because, as she told me, this is the White House, not a military base. A pause. I was the football officer. I could end the world in 60 seconds, but I couldn't wear my country's cloth. The screen flickered. The memo appeared, typed, signed, dated. Rodham Clinton. Dan exhaled. He had seen corruption before, smelled it, but this was different. This was contempt baked into the foundation. A first lady who rewrote reality with memos and smiles. Wielding influence she never had to win at the ballot box. And then came the sound, not a voice. A rhythm, slow, deliberate heels on concrete. She didn't need an introduction. She was the introduction. From the far shadows of the vault, a figure emerged. Sharp suit, straight spine, eyes impossible to read. You're late, Dan. The lights hummed like the walls themselves were holding their breath. The woman in front of him didn't need credentials. She was the credential. So the radio dog shows up, sniffing around my foundations, thinking he'll find something new. Tell me, Dan, is this where the MAGA fantasy dies? Beneath my vault. You call this your vault, Hillary? I thought it belonged to the American people then again. I thought the White House wasn't supposed to double as a psych ward. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. If I wanted blind loyalty, I would have stayed in Arkansas. I didn't build my legacy with yes men and salutes. I built it with silence, with obedience. The kind that doesn't come from medals, but from fear. Fear isn't leadership, Don shot back. It's coercion. And from what I've seen, your West Wing ran more like a hostage zone than a presidential office. Tell me how many men had to duck into doorways just because you walked by. They weren't afraid, they were disciplined. They whispered my name because they knew I didn't tolerate incompetence. And unlike Bill, I didn't bet interns and expect applause for it. I gave them purpose. Dan scrolled through the archive and stopped on a grainy 1996 memo. No military attire permitted in the West Wing. Who signed that order? Don asked, eyes narrowing. Not the commander-in-chief, his wife. Hillary didn't flinch. Of course I signed it. You think Americans wanted soldiers strutting around the White House during peacetime? This wasn't Kabul. It was about optics, stability, control. About erasing the image. Dan's voice hardened. You scrubbed uniforms so no one would mistake the seat of power for a place of honor. I scrubbed the costumes, she shot back, so real decisions could get made without generals breathing down my neck. Do you know how many meetings Bill would have derailed if the Pentagon had been parked outside every room? I wasn't elected, but I knew how Washington worked. Men with stars think in tactics. I think in leverage. And Project Chimera, she paused. The words cutting the air was leverage, too. Dan stepped closer. You don't get to say that name. Oh, I think I just did, Hillary replied. That program never went active. Buzz Patterson remembers it differently, Dan said. She scoffed. Buzz Patterson was a glorified bellhop with a football case. You want to quote a man who carried codes but not a spine? Buzz carried the codes you weren't allowed to touch, Don said sharply. And he carried the fear of a woman who made soldiers dress like accountants, just to feed her ego. You think soldiers make a republic strong? She countered. Secrets do. And the best ones are the ones no one believes. Dan leaned in, voice dropping not a whisper, but a blade. That's the difference between you and me. You believe in control. I believe in exposure. And I'm here to peel you open like a sealed indictment. Hillary's lips curled. You think you're righteous because you have a microphone and a martyr complex? I buried Benghazi. I danced around Epstein. I shredded emails that would have put 5 presidents in cuffs. You don't scare me, Don. I'm not here to scare you, he said, steady. I'm here to make sure the people who feared you for 3 decades finally hear what you sound like when you're cornered. Her eyes glinted. Careful, darling. Cornered animals bite. And cowards with power rewrite history. That vault you're standing in, that's the one thing you forgot to delete. From the wall, a soft, mechanical click. A panel slid open, revealing a cold, red-lit corridor marked Echo Sector. The door blinked once, then twice. Dan's eyes locked on it. That's where you buried the rest of Chimera, isn't it? Hillary's smile faded not to smugness, but to calculation. Dan moved past her toward the door. Her voice followed, static from a dying transmission. You step through that door, Tino'd. Better be ready to see what loyalty really costs. He didn't look back. I already know. Buzz paid it in silence. I'm here to collect. The corridor swallowed him in red light. The door ceiling shut behind him like a warrant dot. Dan pulled the silver USB from his coat pocket, Buzz's last message. He plugged it in. The screen flickered. Then the voice came back, cracked, tired, but still burning with purpose. If this is playing, I'm probably off the grid. Maybe worse. Doesn't matter. What matters is this. If she can make me disappear, what makes? You think you're safe? Dan froze the video. That was a man who once had clearance to end the world in 60 seconds, and he'd had to beg not to be forgotten. You don't understand how Washington works, Hillary said. No, Don replied. I understand exactly. You don't just defeat enemies, you delete them. You don't bury mistakes, you rewrite the page they were printed on. You want a medal ceremony for every disgruntled staffer with a grudge, she shot back. I want names to mean something again. Dan tapped a command. The system scanned a biometric backup. Buzz Patterson. A fingerprint flashed. System response. No match found. Dan stared at the blinking red X. Even his DNA doesn't exist in your system anymore? You recoded history. You didn't just fire him, you voided him. I maintained operational clarity, she said evenly. You think it's cruel? She added. It's containment. Containment of what? Dan pressed. Accountability. Witnesses truth. I didn't delete Buzz. I deleted noise. Men like him get emotional. Unstable. They remember too much. They remember what you want forgotten. A tremor passed through the vault, soft at first, then louder, mechanical grinding. On screen, exfiltration initiated. Archive mirroring in. Progress, Don turned to her. The vault's auto backup just triggered. Data's being copied to an external node. This place is preparing to destroy itself. Her face twitched once. That wasn't supposed to happen. No, Dan said, voice rising. None of this was supposed to happen. Buzz wasn't supposed to speak. I wasn't supposed to be here. Override wasn't supposed to be traceable. And you weren't supposed to lose control. You think this changes anything? She asked. I think it changes everything. Because tonight, for the first time in 30 years, the world hears from a man you buried under paperwork and memory wipes. Buzz's voice returned for one last line. Some names are etched in stone. Mine was written in pencil. She thought. She could erase it, but she forgot pencil leaves indentations. Dan stared at Hillary. I found the indentations. Another tremor. Lights flickered. A countdown began. Vault purge, T 18 minutes. You won't get out with it, she hissed. I don't need to. It's already out there. He held up his phone, live stream active, millions watching. Liberty Station blazing. You didn't. Delete Buzz, Hillary. You promoted him to legend. She looked at the camera, eyes hollow, cold, cornered. Then she did what tyrants do when truth leaks. She stepped back into shadow. The ground trembled again, not from machinery, but momentum. The vault was no longer just a chamber. It was a courtroom. A new prompt blinked. Vault 42, restricted level, classified decryption. Unlocked. Don didn't hesitate. One command, enter. The room dimmed. A file tree unfolded, raw, unsorted, untouched for decades. Internal memos, surveillance cuts. Audio logs. One folder pulsed. Incident Foster V93. He tapped it. A recording crackled alive. A female voice. Sharp, cold, unmistakable. You think just because you wear a Senate pin, you can talk to me like I'm disposable. I buried Vince Foster without a damn tear. You think you scare me? You're a child with a podium. Silence. Then, quieter. Say my name outside this room again, and I swear they'll never find your signature on any resolution or your body. Stayed silent. Hillary spoke. Turn that off. That's not authorized. That's your voice, Don said.